Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Olivia and today I'm doing my November and December reading wrap up. This video is coming a little bit later than I would have preferred and I wasn't sure if I should still do it, but I honestly love hearing people talk about the books that they've read. So we're late, but we've arrived and we're doing it, so let's just get into it. So in the months of November and December, I read 9 books, which I feel like is pretty average for me. And the first book that I read in November, it feels like literal years since I read this book, was That's Upside Down, was A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. This is the third book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. And while I don't love this trilogy, I definitely still liked it. I feel like it's a great place to start for fantasy. And I ended up giving this book 3 stars. And unfortunately, it was my least favorite in the series. I honestly had very similar qualms about this book that a lot of other people had, I think is the best way to say that. I didn't love the storyline in here. I didn't like the characters that were given a lot of attention. And overall, it just wasn't how I would have loved the series to end. I still recommend this series, it just wasn't my personal fave. The next book was one of the biggest surprises of the year. I'm gonna be so real with you guys. I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Yes, I am probably the last person ever to read this book. I know. I just have a hard time. Like when books are really hyped up, I avoid them. I'm going to work on that in 2024. But this book is a STEM romance. It follows, oh my gosh, like I said, it feels like it's been literally years since I've read these books. It follows Olive and Adam, and they are both in STEM fields. Adam is a professor and Olive is a PhD student. I just thought that this was hilarious. I actually thought the writing was so good. And I studied evolutionary biology in college, so I just absolutely ate this story up. If you've been putting off Ali Hazelwood like I have, take this as your sign to give it a chance. I honestly don't have much more to say about this besides the fact that I loved it, and I think I gave this literally 4.5 stars. It was so good. Next up, we have a little bit of a DNF situation. I DNF'd literally one book this year, or I guess now it's last year, it's 2024 right now. I DNF'd one book in 2023, and that would be this book. I'm so sorry if you love this book. It just personally wasn't for me. This is an enemies to lovers workplace romance, and I definitely enjoy enemies to lovers, but it needs to be done in a very specific way for me to like it. And I felt like this enemies to lovers was just like hating each other to hate each other. And honestly, I don't know. I got about 75 pages in, and I really just didn't want to put myself through reading the rest of this book. So I didn't, and I decided to DNF it. I honestly don't see myself giving it another chance, but you never know. All right, everybody was cheering me on in the comment section about this next book that I read, and I'm so glad that you guys did, because just like The Love Hypothesis, I put this book off for longer than I should have, and I finally read Fourth Wing, guys. Can we have a round of applause? Like I did it, and I'm so glad that I did. A war college with dragons and romance. Do I need to say any more than that? I really don't think that I do. This book follows a girl named Violet who her entire life she was raised and educated to become a scribe in this world. But when the day comes to like choose what you're gonna pursue and study, her mom makes her go into the rider's quadrant. So she has to ride dragons. And only like, I don't know, is it 25% of people who enter the Dragon Rider quadrant survive. I honestly really loved Violet's character. There's also a fun little romance plot with our male main character named Zayden, and I really liked the romance. I thought it was good. There were definitely points where I didn't like feel it as deeply as I've felt other romances, if that makes sense. But there's also connections that the writers have to their dragons. And to me, that was a highlight of this book. I just felt like the way that that was done and the way that that was explored was so, so good. And yeah, I ended up giving this book a 4.5. It was really, really, really good. And I'm really excited to dive into Iron Flame. I'm hoping not to put it off too much, but I also know that the next book in the series isn't going to come out for like a while, so I'm not in like a huge rush to get to that book. but I still definitely want to. The next book that I read was Educated by Tara Westover. This was one of the best memoirs that I read in 2023. Holy cow, so good. This book, I honestly don't want to tell you guys too much because I went into it completely blind. Like literally knew next to nothing about this. It follows Tara, the author and subject of this memoir, who grew up in a very like rural area in the Midwest of the United States. And she, for, I don't know, lack of a better way of describing this, she was homeschooled and she did a lot of manual labor for her family and just had a very unconventional lifestyle to, I think, a lot of other people is the best way to say that. And she really beautifully describes her journey from being like a young girl to, you know, the end of her college education and later. And it was so beautiful. It was hard to read too. I will say that, like the things that she had to endure and witness and learn the hard way a lot of times was tough. But with that said, I still really enjoyed it and I'm so glad that I finally took the time to read this. I love memoirs. I learned that this year. Please go check this out if you haven't. It's really, really good. And if you're kind of scared of memoirs, I used to be, this one's pretty short. So I got through it really quickly. So I would recommend. Okay, guys, you may be shocked by this, but I finally read Anxious People by Friedrich Bachmann. This book was on my TBR for maybe like 3 or 4 months in a row. You guys know how every year there's a few books that you just look at and decide that this month isn't the month? That was this book for literally months in a row. And in December, I was like, okay, it's the end of the year. I have to read this book. And I did. And I actually annotated it, which was so fun. Anxious People is literally, I don't know how to describe it. It's like quirky, odd fiction. Is that like an adequate description? I don't know. This book follows the story of a bank robber who essentially fails to rob the bank and instead takes a bunch of people hostage at like a apartment showing, if that makes sense. And all of the characters in here, I literally hated every single one of them at the beginning of this book. Like anytime we'd meet a new character, I was like, you're annoying, you're annoying, you're annoying. Oh, hey, you're annoying. Like I literally didn't like any of them. But I don't know what Friedrich Bachmann did, guys. By the end, I was like, oh my God, they're so sweet. They're so endearing. I love these people. Like we're besties now. And that is not an experience. I don't know if I've ever had that experience with a book before. Like I don't even know how to describe it. I think I ended up giving this book 4 stars and it was good. And the one thing that I would say about this is if you don't like the beginning, that is okay because you will probably like the end. We're getting down to the final books that I read in December. The next book that I read was It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. You guys have probably all seen this book. It's very popular. It's the second book following It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And this book essentially takes place right after It Ends With Us ends. I'm not going to get into the details of this book because in some ways it spoils what happens in the first book. And for me, this book wasn't like a standout in any way, but I definitely love Lily and Atlas and their connection. So as a fan of that couple, I really did enjoy reading this. I felt like I just got to experience like happiness and joy and just like 2 characters who are in love. And I eat that up, okay? I ended up giving this 3.75 stars. I thought it was really good, and I'm glad that I read it. The last physical book that I read in December, I sort of went absolutely ham with the annotations. Like, I don't usually go this ham, but something happened in me and I just devoured An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. I have had this book for a while now. It was, I don't know if your guys' libraries have this too. My local library has like a cart of books that are free that I guess the library doesn't check out anymore. And this was on it like probably a year ago. And I grabbed it thinking that one day I want to read this series. Literally didn't know anything about it. And then in the comment section, you guys were like, oh, Olivia, no one talks about this book, but it was one of my favorites. Like a few of you said that. And I was like, okay, I need to prioritize this book. In this book, we basically have the Marshall Empire. that rules over all these other different groups. There's like tribesmen and is it scribes? And our two main characters, we get two POVs in this book, which I really, really enjoyed. We have Leia's POV and Elias. Leia is in the group of people that has been enslaved by the Empire. And she, at the beginning of the book, for one reason or another, teams up with the rebel group to go undercover at the Marshall Empire's War College, okay? And the other POV is a character named Elias, and he is like the best student at the Marshall Empire College. Like he's like the best soldier that they have, pretty much. And obviously they're like totally different from each other, but they have things in common. And low-key, guys, there's no dragons in this book, but if you like got that like 5-star feeling from Fourth Wing and you're looking for something to make you feel that way again, I would high-key recommend this book. There is a war college, there is a romance that brews mostly towards the end, there's good side characters, plot twists. I thought it was really, really good. And guys, the romance in here, crumbs. Like, we get next to nothing. I absolutely ate it up. Like, I was giddy over it. It was so good. I gave this book 4 stars. There were things about it that I didn't like love, but overall, I just ate it up. Absolutely ate it up. Okay, those were all the physical books. And then the last book that I read in December was Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. This was a Christmas romance. I read a Christmas romance every single year with my best friend, and I loved this book. I did not see that coming. I read Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh last year, and I loved the beginning of it, but I didn't particularly enjoy the second half of it. But I think it was because of some like mismarketing, so my expectations didn't match what I was reading. I think if I read that again, I might honestly enjoy it a lot more. And Snowed In, our main character, the book starts off with her literally like leaving her man at the altar and like running away. And it's a childhood friends to lovers book. So our actual story takes place like I think 5 years later, and she reconnects with someone that she was friends with growing up. She hasn't been back to her small town since she left the wedding. So she hasn't seen her family, her friends, all this stuff. And so I don't know what it was about it. It was just so good. And I would highly recommend, even if it's not Christmas, like it was still, I would read this at any time of year. I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, everybody, that was my November and December reading wrap up. This feels a bit chaotic. Give me a second. Let me know what your guys' favorite book that you read in the last like 2 months was. I would love to hear it. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day and a fantastic reading month. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye.